Hello followers and welcome back to the Dragon Age Origins Zathla-San playthrough. Last episode, we got to kiss Morrigan and get to know her a bit more, and we're going to continue getting to know her and some of the other party members that we haven't talked to yet. Hopefully this will be the last episode of just talking and we'll be able to go to some of the missions and do some fun stuff. But without further ado...
Yes?
So life in the wilds must have been very lonely.
At times, perhaps. A world full of people and buildings and things was all very foreign to me. If I wished companionship, I ran with the wolves and flew with the birds. If I spoke, 'twas to the trees.
And that seemed normal to you.
What did I have to compare it with? In time, I began to wonder, of course. I recall the first time I crept beyond the edge of the wilds. I did so in animal form, remaining in the shadows and watching these strange townsfolk from afar. I happened upon a noblewoman by her carriage, adorned in sparkling garments the likes of which I had never before seen. I was dazzled. This, to me, seemed what true wealth and beauty must be. I snuck up behind her and stole a hand mirror from the carriage. 'Twas encrusted in gold and crystalline gemstones, and I hugged it to my chest with delight as I sped back to the wilds.
I can't imagine Flemeth was pleased.
She was not. Flemeth was furious with me. I was a child and had not yet come into my full power, and I had risked discovery for the sake of a pretty bauble. To teach me a lesson, Flemeth took the mirror and smashed it upon the ground. I was heartbroken.
I have a hard time picturing you heartbroken.
That is because I learned my lesson well. Beauty and love are fleeting and have no meaning. Survival has meaning. Power has meaning. Without those lessons, I would not be here today, as difficult as they might have been.
They made you stronger, didn't they?
They did indeed. To return to your original question, perhaps my time in the wilds was indeed lonely, but such was how it had to be. I find myself at times wondering what might have become of the girl with the beautiful golden mirror, but such fantasies have no place amidst reality. Yes?
I'd like to ask you something.
If you must.
Have you ever been hunted by the Chantry?
You are very cute to ask so many questions.
And you are cute when you're evasive.
Really? Perhaps we should be wrapped in ribbons and adorned with flowers. So cute are we, too. My mother has been hunted from time to time, yes, by Templar fools like Alistair, which should tell you how successful they generally were. Flemeth made a bit of a game of it, in fact. The Templars would come again, and she would look at me and smile and say that the fun was to begin once more.
You really had no trouble with them?
I am unsure. I was too young to understand, and perhaps 'twas bravado on Flemeth's part, or perhaps she was merely amused. I will never know. Flemeth would warn them, once. 'Twas a warning they inevitably failed to heed. And then the true game began. Often Flemeth would use me as bait. A little girl to scream and run and lure the Templars deeper into the wilds and to their doom.
Surely more would have followed.
Sometimes. Eventually. Thankfully, the wilds is a vast place. Once they found us, Flemeth would simply move us elsewhere, and we would be lost within the forest once again. I did not understand the danger we faced until I was much older. I had never heard of apostates or maleficarum.
Do you still think that was fun?
I think that my mother made it fun so that a child did not learn to fear. And I think that it was necessary. There are no trials for apostates, no prisons, no mercy. There are only absolutes, so only survival matters. If the wilds have taught me anything, 'tis this. First, you must survive. Do you disagree?
Yup, I have no opinion on the matter.
An interesting answer for a mage. Enough of this talk. Let us return to the task at hand. Yes?
I'd like to ask you something.
If you must.
Is Flemeth really what she thinks about? Or seems to be?
Well, that depends, does it not? What does she seem to be?
A nutty old bat?
Sometimes I do wonder the very same thing. Tell me, how much do you know of the tale? The one that the chastened still tell of my mother, to frighten them into obedience.
I've heard a little of it.
No doubt such a tale has mutated much over time and telling. I can relay what Flemeth once told me herself, and you can decide whether or not 'tis the truth, if you desire.
That sounds interesting.
As the tale is sung by the bards, there was a time when Flemeth was young and beautiful, a fair lass in a land of barbarian men, the desire of any who saw her.
Yes, I've heard this part.
The tales say that Flemeth fell in love with Osen the bard, and fled the castle of her husband, the dread Lord Conabar, and that he swore vengeance for her infidelity. In truth, my mother claims that 'twas Osen who was her husband, and Conabar the jealous lord who looked on from afar. Lord Conabar approached young Osen and offered him wealth and power in exchange for his lovely wife, and Osen agreed.
Yeah, seems like a fair deal.
Aye, it was. 'Twas Flemeth who suggested the arrangement in the first place. All would have been well had Lord Conabar kept his end of the bargain. But he was a foul man who bargained with coin he did not possess. Osen was led off to a field and slain, left for dead. Flemeth spoke to the spirits and learned of the deed, and swore revenge.
She spoke to spirits or demons?
Spirits first, and 'twas they who slew Conabar. Flemeth did not turn to the demon until much later. Lord Conabar's allies chased Flemeth, you see, chased her to the wilds, and there she hid. There she found the demon, and he made her strong. The legends all speak of the great hero Cormac, he who defeated Flemeth and her great army when she invaded the lowlands centuries later. All lies.
Which? She never invaded or she never defeated her?
The truth of the matter is that there was never an invasion. As Flemeth tells it, the Chastened never raised an army under her banner, and she never fought with any warrior named Cormac. Cormac led a brutal civil war against his own people, and later claimed it was to vanquish evil that had taken root amongst the lords. Thus, he was hailed a hero. Flemeth was only attached to the legend much later. Perhaps 'twas due to the great war with the Chastened that eventually came, but Mother claims not to know how it began.
An interesting story, thank you.
Flemeth tells it with far more embellishment than I, but you are welcome. Dare I ask of your own mother? Few are abominations of legend, 'tis true, but I find myself curious nevertheless.
There's nothing really to say about her. I never met her.
I find myself a little envious, to tell the truth. But it matters not. Let us move on. Yes?
I'd like to ask you something.
If you must.
Never mind.
Yes?
I'd like to discuss something
We're in
personal.
camp, so 'tis as good a time as any. Ah, such a romantic, I see.
Now let's see, do I have any gifts? None that are useful. And I don't have any, which is a shame. Yep. Seems about right. So that's it for Morgan for now. We'll talk to... I think I've already gotten Alistair out of the way.
Something on your mind? Of course.
Yep, Alistair's done, which leaves Sten, Liliana, and the dog. We'll do Sten.
Why are we stopping?
I think we should talk for a moment.
There are darkspawn to be fought. Is this delay needful?
I need to know if I can trust you at my back.
I am Kunari. I have given my word to aid you. We are not people of idle promises.
I've never seen a Quinari before. Tell me about your people.
No.
No, why not?
People are not simple. They cannot be summarized for easy reference in the manner of, the elves are a lithe, pointy-eared people who excel at poverty.
You said you were in the army?
I am.
What made you decide to become a soldier?
Decide. I am a Sten of the Beresad. I did not choose to be who I am any more than you did.
Are you alright? You were in the cage for weeks.
You are concerned. No need. I am fit enough to fight.
We should get moving.
As you wish. Yes.
What were you doing in that cage?
Sitting, as you observed.
Do you have to be so literal?
No, it's a choice, not a necessity.
Are you going to answer my question?
I did. Parshera, was there anything else?
I have a question.
I am hardly surprised.
Why did you come to Ferelden?
To answer a question.
What was that question?
The Arishok asked what is the Blight. By his curiosity, I am now here.
Don't you have to report back then?
Yes.
When are you going to do that?
Never. I cannot go home.
Well, you can stay with us.
Thank you. Can we move on? We keep the Darkspawn waiting.
I wanted to discuss
Speak,
something
then.
you mentioned. That's enough for
Then
now.
I suggest we move on.
Question?
I am hardly surprised.
Never
Very
mind.
well.
Let's go.
As you wish.
And then let's redo it and see if anything else
Yes.
comes up. I have a question.
I am hardly surprised.
Never mind then.
Very well.
Just...
Speak, then. Then I suggest we move
Okay.
on.
Well, we can't get
you
anything from
wish.
him now. Which means we're gonna go talk to the dog first.
Oh, why, you little...
Are you harassing my dog?
Me harassing your dog? I should say it's the other way round. Your furry friend here took offence at me getting near his food. He snapped at me, look.
Well, he is a war dog.
Sometimes I forget that he's a war dog. That'll teach me.
Yep.
I once heard a really old legend about how the hound warriors in the days of the old tribes would feed their Mabari the flesh of the vanquished. Well, that's what I heard anyway. It would sometimes be human flesh. Oh, like you can tell the difference. For all you know, maybe you've already been fed something. Someone.
If you've had it and didn't know it, it was probably tasty.
Look at what your fool dog placed in my pack. A putrid, half-eaten hare is not something a woman wants to find in her unmentionables.
He ruined them? Does that mean you have to go without?
Maybe, but that is not the point. The dirty mongrel can have this back, there, and tell him not to do it again.
You heard the lady.
I don't want it, you worthless fur bag.
That dog is too smart for his own good.
He is certainly manipulative, I can tell. I do it too.
You are a true warrior and worthy of respect.
bad dog. The best part is you can play fetch with the dog. If you use the stick item, you can throw it and he'll be like, I'm gonna go get the stick.
Yes?
I'd like to talk.
Well, here I am.
This vision of yours.
I knew this would come up sooner or later. I don't know how to explain, but I had a dream. In it, there was an impenetrable darkness. It was so dense, so real. And there was a noise, a terrible, ungodly noise. I stood on a peak and watched as the darkness consumed everything. And when the storm swallowed the last of the sun's light, I fell, and the darkness drew me in.
So you dreamed of the blight?
I suppose I did. That was what the darkness was, no? When I woke, I went to the Chantry's gardens, as I always do. But that day, the rose bush in the corner had flowered. Everyone knew that bush was dead. It was grey and twisted and gnarled, the ugliest thing you ever saw. But there it was, a single beautiful rose. It was as though the Maker stretched out his hand to say, even in the midst of this darkness, there is hope and beauty. Have faith.
And this made you want to help me?
In my dream, I fell. Or maybe I jumped. I'd do anything to stop the blight. I know that we can do it. There are so many good things in the Maker's world. How can I sit by while the blight devours everything?
I suppose I couldn't sit by either.
That is why you're a Grey Warden. Come, there's a blight to stop. Yes?
I'd like to talk.
Well, here I am.
What was life like in the Chantry Cloister?
Quiet. It was a life suited for contemplation. In the cloister, away from the fuss and the flurry of the cities, I found peace. And in that stillness, I could hear the Maker. But it was not perfect. Some of my Chantry fellows were condescending. That is the nature of religious folk, I suppose.
Yes, they tend to be self-righteous.
When I talked about my beliefs, that the Maker reveals himself in the beauty of his world, they treated me with disdain. They want to believe that he's gone, so that when he turns his gaze on them, it means they are special, chosen. He cannot possibly have love for all, the sick and the weary, the beggars and the fools.
I prefer your ideas to the ideas of the Chantry.
Thank you. Maybe I am wrong. But it is the Maker's place to decide if I am worthy, not men, not the Chantry. But there is work to be done, and I have talked enough for now. Yes?
I'd like to talk.
Well, here I am.
What would someone like you be doing in the Lothering's Chantry?
What is meant by someone like me?
They don't teach you how to fight in the cloister, do they?
Did you think I was always a cloistered sister? The Chantry provides succor and safe harbor to all who seek it. I chose to stay and become affirmed.
What did you do before that?
I was a traveling minstrel in Orlais. Tales and songs were my life. I performed, and they rewarded me with applause and coin. And my skill in battle? Well, you pick up different skills when you travel, yes? Yes, of course. Let's move on. Yes?
I'd like to talk.
Well, here I am.
You're a traveling minstrel. Do you have tales to share?
Of course I do. I love stories far too much to keep them to myself. Everyone should be able to benefit from them, I think.
Do you know any Ferelden legends?
I know one, told to me by my mother a long time ago. It always chilled me to the bone. Maybe you have heard of Flemeth?
Yes, I've heard of Flemeth.
Ferelden mothers scare their daughters with talk of Flemeth. They say that if you're bad, Flemeth will spirit you away and bind you to her forever. They also say that Flemeth mourns her lost beauty and will steal yours through your looking glass if she catches you.
Flemeth was once beautiful?
Flemeth's beauty was known throughout the land. She had hair like unto a moonless night, skin as pale as winter's first snow, and eyes as beautiful and perilous as the sea. When she came of age, she came to the attention of the Lord of Highever, Conobar, and he took her for his wife. Conobar soon learned that his young bride had the gift of magic. He kept this a secret, for he feared that she would be taken from him. Flemeth stayed with Conobar for some years, and with his blessing, she practiced her art. And then one day, a young poet named Osen came to the castle. Flemeth was captivated by Osen's voice, and he by her beauty, and they fell in love.
What happened then?
Flemeth longed to be with her true love, and she and Osen fled from Conobar's lands, seeking refuge in the Kokari wilds with the Chasing tribes. They lived there happily for many a year, till the day Flemeth received news that Conobar was dying and longed to see her face one last time. Flemeth's heart swelled with pity for the man who once was her husband, and begged Osen to return to Conobar's side with her. But when Flemeth and Osen entered Highever, they were captured by Conobar's men, and Osen was slain in front of Flemeth's eyes. Flemeth was imprisoned in the highest tower of the castle, there to await Conobar's judgment on her. Distraught at the loss of her love, Flemeth plotted revenge against her husband. She summoned a fey demon, intending for it to wreak vengeance on Conobar. But a spell went awry. The demon possessed Flemeth. Turning her into an abomination, the halls of the castle ran red with blood as Flemeth slaughtered Conobar and all his men. The last of Flemeth's humanity melted away, and at dawn, she stole back to the wilds to plot and scheme for 100 years. They say she took to her side many Chasing men, and with their help, begat her daughter witches, who even now prowl the dark places of the Kokari wilds.
And you know any stories about Olay?
Of course, Orlesians enjoy telling stories. I shall tell you my favorite tale of Aveline, the Knight of Olay.
Go ahead.
A long time ago, a girl child was born to a farmer. He had hoped for a son, not a daughter, and so he told his wife to abandon the child in the woods. Before the cold could claim her, the baby was found by a tribe of Dalish elves who took pity on the poor mewling thing and raised her as their own. Aveline, for that is what they called her, grew strong and quick and clever under the guidance of the elves. She learned to wield the sword as well as any man, could kill a deer with an arrow at 100 paces, and was as graceful on the back of a horse as she was on foot.
Ooh, I saw that.
Many legends have familiar forms and themes. We enjoy them so because we know them. Aveline's Dalish guardians saw that she could easily best any Orlesian chevalier in battle, and wanted to show the cruel humans the child they had left to die. They bestowed upon her a fine horse and armor, and sent her to prove herself to her people in the grand tourney. Now in those days, no woman was allowed to take up arms, let alone compete in the grand tourney, but Aveline kept her helmet on and was not discovered.
Did she win the tourney?
Aveline won many events and gained the approval of the adoring crowd. Eventually, she came face to face with the knight Kaleva in the grand melee. Aveline had already bested him in the joust, and Kaleva was determined not to lose a second time. Out of desperation to regain his honor, Kaleva tripped Aveline and tossed her to the ground, ripping off her helmet as he did so. Silence fell upon the arena as Aveline was revealed. Kaleva declared the previous competitions invalid. A woman had taken part, and this was not allowed. But the crowd cheered for Aveline. Kaleva was furious, for he had lost to a woman and was now being shamed. Blinded by his rage, he forced Aveline to her knees. "Know your place, woman," cried he. and slit her throat.
That's terrible.
The son of the king, Prince Freyan, was present. He recognized Avelin's skill and bravery and began to see the injustice done to the women in his land. When he was made king, he rewrote the laws of Orlais so that women could also become chevalier. He honored Aveline and knighted her after her death. And to this day, any female who is knighted reveres Aveline the Brave, for she is the patron of all women chevalier.
Tell me about the Darkspawn.
Chantry law says it is man's pride that created the Darkspawn. In ages past, the mages of the Tevinter Imperium ruled much of the world we know. In their pride, they thought their magics invincible and imagined that they were greater than the Maker himself. So thinking, they invaded his golden city, planning to take it for themselves and depose their own creator. But they were impure and full of sin. And it is with the sin that they tainted the golden city, corrupting it forever. The Maker cursed them and cast them from his sight. Wherever they went, they spread the taint of their sin. Any land that was touched by the taint became blighted and would suffer no life. Instead, the Darkspawn arose to torment us and remind us of our hubris.
There's another story I wanted to hear.
Which one?
Do you know anything about the Dalish?
I have heard a little about how the elves gained their freedom from the Tevinter Imperium. When Andraste began her exalted march against the Imperium, the elves joined her cause to fight their masters. The great elven leader, Shatan, born in captivity, rose up to lead his people. He foresaw a future where the elves were free. Shatan was killed when Andraste was betrayed, but the elves continued to fight, eventually breaking free of the Imperium. The elves claimed the Dales in the south and settled there in a land of their own.
It didn't last.
The elves lived in the Dales for centuries. They resurrected the worship of the elven gods and would allow the building of no chantry. This angered the chantry, and the hostility between the two factions finally broke out in open war. The chantry says the elves struck first, but I do not know whether to believe it. The chantry declared a wholly exalted march against the elves, named for Andraste's similar march against Tevinter. During the exalted march of the Dales, the elven cities were sacked, and the elven state completely dissolved. Some of the elves bitterly accepted their fates and surrendered to human rule, living in the human cities as second-class citizens. But others, still fiercely proud of their heritage, refused to bow to the humans, and instead became homeless wanderers. They were the elves of the Dales, the Dalish.
What do you know about Andraste?
Andraste was the Maker's chosen. The Maker had long since abandoned the world when the sound of her singing turned his ear. Beauty, grace, and wisdom enraptured him, and he offered to take her from this flawed world to become his divine bride. But Andraste had an earthly husband and would not forsake him. Instead, she beseeched the Maker to return to his people once more. So earnest was her plea that the Maker was moved, and promised that he would create a paradise on earth if all abandoned their false gods and turned once more to him. And this is why Andraste began her exalted march on the idolaters of the Tevinter Imperium. The Maker granted her his powers with which to smite her enemies. Andraste brought the Imperium to its knees, and her victories converted many to the worship of the Maker.
How did Andraste die?
Alas, it was the frailties of men that betrayed and killed Andraste. Her earthly husband, Maferath, a chieftain of the Alamari tribes himself, grew jealous as his wife's popularity and influence overshadowed his own. She was also revered as the Maker's betrothed, and Maferath began to see their own bond waning in significance as Andraste became ever more devoted to the Maker. Out of envy and spite, Maferath made a pact with the Archon Hysarian of Tevinter, allowing his beloved Andraste to be ambushed and captured. Andraste was burned at the stake in Minrathous, the capital of Tevinter.
Why did the Maker not save her with his power?
I have thought on this too. Did he withdraw his sight from her at that moment? Where were all the powers he bestowed upon her? This question has come to me many times, and I have no answer. Perhaps there was no way for Andraste to return to the Maker but through her death. We will never know for sure.
Let's just move on.
Yes?
I'd like to talk.
Well, here I am.
Let's just move on. And with that, we're finally able to move on to the next level. And with that, we'll be ending this episode here. As always, if you liked the video, slap the like button. Don't forget to subscribe to help me become a GodTuber. And I'll see you all next time.